So if you're actually, yeah, I just started. So if you're actually using your own vehicle to travel to work or anywhere else, so you have petrol or diesel or you're using CNG, so that's all scope 1, which is direct emissions which you're creating through direct usage. And scope 2 is our electricity consumption, which we do day in and day out every single day. So that's our scope 1 and scope 2. If I just have to extend this a little bit more, and I am a home cook, okay, I do cooking at home, I cater. Okay, I'm a home cook, I cater. Now comes in my scope 3. So while scope 1 is my LPG consumption, electricity consumption, scope 2, scope 1 is my, LPG, scope 2 is my electricity consumption from ovens, microwaves, etc., etc. Scope 3 is where I am getting my stuff from my vendors. So their, usage of vehicles to deliver the stuff to me, and then sending it to the customers. Now that's where the customers will consume the food, but then there is packaging that is left. So I have to worry about that as waste, and that also is my scope 3. So disposal of packaging. So this is very, very, in very limited words, so to speak, is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. And what was your next question?
Would also love to understand that if at all, and if yes, how does real estate differ from other industries when it comes to calculating, measuring scope 1, 2, 3?
Okay. In really speaking, scope 1 and scope 2 doesn't change much. Okay, before I say anything else, real estate right now in India is a very unorganized sector, Arushi, very unorganized. I mean, they don't, they still, and interestingly, their scope 1 emissions is 39% of the global emissions is from real estate. Scope 3. Yeah. So that's a huge quantity. They're just about getting to understand what this is all about. So when I entered into Rustamji, I mean, nobody really had heard of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So we started actually with scope 1, said, okay, where are we using diesel generator sets, DG sets, which are owned by us as an organization, right? Where do we have our own vehicles flying back and forth? Do we have anything? Because scope 1 is very clearly limited to what is owned by the company and the energy that is used in that particular vehicle or infrastructure or a machinery or whatever that may be. Now in real estate, a lot of these equipment or infrastructure is bought by the contractor. So understand the catch here now. Am I going to call that a scope 1 or am I going to call that a scope 3? Because it's not directly owned by me as an organization, right? So sometimes you have to get your logical and practical sense there and say, well, the contractor is using the DG set, all right, but you're the one who's paying him for it, right? You have also the operational controls on it. It's because he's on your site. So for all practical purposes, we decided we take it as scope 1. Someone else may take it as scope 3 and say it is not in, we can train him, we can tell him to calculate, but then that's never going to happen. So we said, no, we'll take it as scope 1 because we do have operational controls. We know how much diesel, so we will take all the information, the primary data from him, how much diesel he is putting into the DG sets, and we get all the primary data. So it becomes our scope 1. And we say, okay, that's the quantity that he is using. Now, something like this might not happen in a manufacturing industry. Because in a manufacturing industry, they might be owning the DG sets themselves. Or for that matter, any other equipment where you need some kind of energy source other than electricity. So, for example, in a power plant, they use coal, they burn coal, or they use some kind of renewable, like, bagasse or something, but that's owned by them. It's not owned by someone else. So the decision here is very critical, is what do you want to do? So for a real estate, particularly, I'm saying this because a lot of contractors are working on real estate sites for different projects. So it's not a single project. Imagine Rustamji has projects all over Mumbai. And then there are different contractors who are doing this. So this was one challenge, but we figured it out that, okay, we take it as scope 1. Scope 2, straight, very easy. And I would say majority of the energy consumed is scope 2 for real estate as of today. In terms of direct, I won't say direct, but yeah, indirect direct. I call it indirect direct because it's again in your control. You're taking from the grid, all right, but you can decide how much of energy do you really want to use, how much are you wasting, and how do you want to reduce it. It's easier. You just shift to green tariff, or you shift to greener sources of energy, you shift to solar, still easier. But when you talk of scope 3, it's a different ball game altogether. And that's where the challenge lies. And when you're talking about a real estate industry versus a manufacturing company, I will tell you largely out of the 15 categories, there are two most important category that is there in a real estate, maybe three, is purchase goods and services, because it's a lot of cement, steel, AAC blocks, sanitary ware, you name it, paints, and we've got this huge quantities of these material that are coming in, right, to make the building, to make homes, to make offices. And the next is after your product is sold, that's the home. So there's a fair amount of emissions which are coming in a built environment. So, and you see, interestingly, these two are connected. So when I look at purchase goods and services, and I say, okay, I'm going to buy green products. Understand? So I'm reducing the emissions there, and I'm also reducing the emissions downstream, because the built environment has already taken into consideration materials which have not only been processed or made in a what do you say, in a renewable manner, or where energy scope 1 and scope 2 is already reduced, but even as part of my customer using it, the scope 3 is also reduced. So I know it gets a little complicated. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Me as a question. So
I think I'll ask you, I'll continue asking you. In my next question, I'll maybe loop in Alok's question. So also, I think something you mentioned right now, right? That for you, when it comes to the purchase goods and service, um, you tend to have I mean, one way to reduce that is to kind of switch to greener products, right? And I think another issue is that the sector is highly unorganized, right? Today in the market, is there an how much of your products are available in like the green form, right? So to speak, how many sustainable alternatives are available today when it comes to purchase goods and service?
Okay. So now, if you ask me how many and how much, I don't think I have a straight answer for this.
Yeah.
But yes, I'll break it up. First of all, Arushi, I think we need to understand which are the products we want to target. I can't be taking all my purchase goods and services. So what I would do is break it down and say, okay, 80% of my spend on purchase goods and services, where does it come from? And largely, I'm not saying everywhere, but largely, the 80% of the spend would ideally come from cement, from steel, from concrete, from AC blocks, and then it starts dropping down, right? So my spend is largely on these big 5 or 6 ticket items, right? So who am I going to target initially is these 5, 6 players or suppliers. So the next thing that I do is start looking at the cement sector and see actually who is doing a lot of work in sustainability. So what happens is, in terms of sustainability, I have these big players like Ambuja, AAC, all these people who are actually already doing a lot of things in terms of scope 1, 2, and they're also looking at their scope 3 emissions. So that's where I make a decision and say, who do I want to actually procure from? I might be able to get my primary data more easily from them, okay, where I want to calculate my scope 3 emissions. So I really don't look at green product as such there, but I understand who are these big players. Then steel, when you're taking from rolling mills, all their steel is actually recycled steel. they don't use raw material as in crude form. They're not producing steel. They're taking already used steel and then they're reprocessing it. So what is important for me here is, now this is one sector which is highly unorganized, and this is one sector where you will really have to work with those vendors and understand what are their scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. Because when they are processing that recycled steel, they are actually emitting. Now here is where I would look at a green product. So what happens is, when it is certified Green Pro, somebody's already verified and validated it. Right. And so they've seen all their systems, they've seen, yes, they're doing something nice. And so basically, that's how you look at the Green Pro in terms of products. You come to wood, then there are certified companies who actually give you wood that is certified through forest stewardship and also IFRS or whatever it's called. And then you look at other material that you're using, finished material, you're using some kind of plastering material. All of these, there are some or the other players, ceramics, where they have actually been verified and validated. Their product rather has been verified and validated through an external agency like IGBC, to give you an example. Like the CII has this whole vertical where they are actually certifying green products. So that's how you have to break it down. So first and foremost is to understand really, who do I want to work with? Which are the materials that I want to look at in terms of scope 3? I'm not looking at everything. So I'll say, okay, these are my 5 players. And after that, anyone who's where I'm spending maybe more than 1% or 2% of my total spend, and the other ones I'll take in that 20%. So clearly use the 80-20 principle. Otherwise, it can get really, really difficult and even more challenging. And in that, start looking at who's giving green products. There are very many. You can look up and you'll find everything online.
Got it. And thank you so much. I think now that we're getting into the weeds of the scope 3 aspect, so you mentioned that there are a few categories which are the most important from a scope 3 perspective for the real estate industry. You've talked at length about the purchase goods and service, right? Now there again, could you how easy or hard is the custom, like the end of use category, right? And again, out of the two, which one is easier for you to reduce your emissions against? And would love to know why as well.
Interesting. Okay, so I'll tell you what. No, this is purely from my experience, is what I'm talking. It may not apply necessarily to everyone. Okay, I want to make that disclaimer here. When you're talking about purchase goods and services, we're talking about different players who you don't have direct control. A lot of suppliers basically don't have the expertise or the knowledge to even calculate their scope 1 and scope 2. They don't have the technology. They are not aware what is scope 1 and scope 2. So obviously, when they're not aware, it's an Herculean task to actually collaborate with them, make them understand, get them to do this, and then get the data from them. Only then can you say, okay, now I will. So once you have the data from them, then you say, okay, now I can tell them reduce this or use alternative sources of energy, or don't use diesel and petrol, shift to greener forms of energy. Now you understand that it's not going to be very easy. So it is a very uphill task over there. When you're talking about, we're largely talking only 2 categories. There are many others, but when you're talking about sold products, so you're talking about a home, what happens in that case is you're saying, okay, I'm going to build a green home. All right. So what am I doing here is I'm trying to see that I get the best quality possible, or the best possible, supplier for cement and the best possible supplier for steel. See, again, there is a catch here, because I'm talking about built environment. So I can't talk only about giving, just giving water treatment systems. When you're talking built environment, you're talking sustainability, you're talking about a green building where you're not just talking energy. You're talking about energy is one part. You're talking about water. We're talking about actually the layout of the entire building, where it is located, the site. you're talking about community, you're talking about proximity to all good, because you're talking about in totality. Now, coming to energy, that's one part only for a green building. So, in terms of energy, we're talking about, okay, can I give them solar heating? Can I provide them some kind of alternate forms of energy like solar or wind so that their basic heating works on solar and they don't have to take it from the grid? So it's a renewable source of energy and not a non-renewable energy. Then can I give them more efficient pumps, which will take in less energy? So there is an operational this over there, which our engineering team, MEP team has to understand. Then am I giving them high efficiency air conditioning units? And you've seen those 3 stars, 5 stars, 4 stars. So all that equipment efficiency plays a very important role here, right? Then what kind of insulation are we providing so that they don't have the heat island effect? Now that insulation need not only be for inside, but also outside on the roof. How is the building oriented so they get maximum daylight saving, but also they don't heat up too fast, too quickly. So this is the built environment, is where we have to. Now, in terms of built environment, we not only look at energy, like I told you, we have to look at holistically, what am I giving my customer? Of course, you can start with a few things. And since we're talking scope 3, let's limit ourselves to the energy part. Otherwise, this can become a huge discussion. So yes, in terms of energy, these are all the things that we need to look at. Which one is more challenging and difficult? I'll let you all decide. Like I told you, it's connected.
Yeah.
And I don't, and this came to me right now when I was talking to you, it's connected.
Correct.
So if I have somebody who's giving me the right kind of cement, whose scope 3, scope 1, and scope 2 is reduced already, automatically my built environment has a better quality of total emissions. So when we talk about net zero, so there's another approach to it. Is when I'm looking at net zero, I'm saying, okay, I am going to give alternate forms of energy. I'm going to reduce the consumption of energy. I'm going to reduce my scope 1, my scope 2. I will use solar during construction. I will use I'll use green energy during construction. My scope 3 will be reduced, but still there will be some amount of energy. You're never going to be net zero. There is always going to be some spillover, some leftover. Now, there is where you need to buy credits. And thereafter, I think I got distracted. So, yeah, from those popping up. So, anyway, so once you, that's when you have to buy your credits. What we can also look at in terms of real estate is, see, in Mumbai, it's very difficult to have huge quantities of tree plantation and all,
Yeah.
So basically, when you're looking at getting carbon credits,
Yeah.
so afforestation or sequestration is one of them, right? So if a builder or developer has a lot of land, then they can start looking at that as well, is planting a lot of trees. And again, there is a thing of which trees to plant and how quickly they will grow, how much water they need, how hardy they are, all of these things, So you can plant those kind of trees. There are a variety of trees that are given or stipulated. And then, but it takes at least 3 to 5 years even for that one small little thing to come up, right?
Yeah.
And so you can get the credits only after that, right? So again, how do you actually kind of nullify those emissions which are left over after you've done everything? You've done decarbonization, you've moved to, you've done reduction through your operational efficiencies, you've actually used alternate forms of energy, but still there is some left over. And then that's where you buy your carbon credits. And you say, okay, I'm giving a net zero built environment. And it's a requirement, net zero.
I think in just extending on what you just said, I believe Harish had a question which is quite I don't know if it's, no, I think it's Harsha's question, that today in terms of these green buildings, right? These green products. How is the consumer reacting, or is there a strong preference towards these kind of buildings today in the market?
So I would say that the awareness is growing. It depends on which sector you are building. So if it's a sector wherein people are actually, high-end sectors is where I see people asking. Now also it's all about awareness basically. So where are you going to see the awareness? You're going to see the awareness only at the higher end sectors. Also it's a lot to do with money. If it's not costing them anything extra, see, Indian market is very cost sensitive market. If it's not costing them anything extra and the customer is not having to pay for it, you can't sell, say, green building hai, we are going to charge you more. No, it's still not there. Okay. So yeah, so I think it's more about whether you're giving them this whole thing. You're telling them that yes, eventually their operational cost for electricity will go down tremendously. Maybe that will sell. When you tell them organic waste compactors will help you to ensure that your waste is getting treated correctly, the organic waste, and the waste is, it's going to get converted into usable form of manure, and you can use it for your landscaping. When you tell them that whatever water efficiency systems you've given is going to save water, and also recycle and reuse water, and it'll come back for horticulture, it can come back for using in toilets or wherever, like grey water. uh, yeah, so they might just that's interesting for everyone now. And again, it depends on which sector. If you're talking about the low end, or where your the cost is not too high and all, affordable sector, then I don't see too much interest in the affordable sector yet of wanting. Arushi, there's one more thing that I feel here that real estate and developers need to do is educate customers. Educate customers on why green is good, why green is important, then they'll pay a premium for it. Because in the long run, it definitely saves them a lot of money also. So if I look at all the utilities, my common utilities, my parking spaces or my street lights or my recreation clubhouse, wherever, and I can run the electrical energy, the source can be solar or wind, right? I am finally giving them that benefit. Their cost will go down, no, in terms of maintenance. So yeah, so I think these things need to be first explained in terms of money, and then environment. So although I feel that what is more important is environment, but then again, that's being a little idealistic, and I've been very passionate about it. So
yeah, I completely agree with you. Same for us also, right? Whenever even we with our current customers, and when we're speaking to new customers as well, right? I think having and only environment pitch is not enough, right? You do have to show them how it benefits their top line, their bottom line, right? Show them research on how their end customer or consumer or even the business that they're selling to would perceive it. And the good thing is that that parallel can be drawn, right? In most industries today, you really can show them that cost benefit analysis. It takes a while to develop, but now I think there are enough and more products using which you can develop that. Also, I think you were talking about how the end consumer is not willing to pay additional, right? I think on the flip side for you, right? I believe this is again Harsha's question, that when you are procuring, from your upstream partners, when you are buying that cement, when you are buying that steel, for the green cement, green steel that you procure, is the cost any different, or is it the same?
no, I don't see, because what is happening now is, in fact, there is more resource efficiency, if you ask me. Because one very simple thing is, when a supplier, see, we do have a lot of dealers in the middle also, right? Not necessary that everything for us is coming from a manufacturing unit. It could be the dealer who's getting it. So if a supplier is very, very, for example, let's take cement. He has to send all his material, raw material, he has to transport it to a dealer or to the company site, right? Now, during the transportation, okay, how does he plan his logistics? How does he plan his transportation? How does he ensure that his downstream transportation scope 3 emissions are reduced? Is through route planning, is through fuel efficiency, right? Automatically, there is a reduction for him. Okay. So there is a double advantage here. One is your scope 3 emissions are reducing as a customer. His obviously is reducing. And then the second thing is that he also gains from that. So why will he not do that? Right. So in terms of efficiency, I think initially green products were expensive and everybody started, but I see a decline now in terms of pricing. Except for I see that in glass, you know, there some of the glass that I see has high price, but that is also slowly reducing. So no, green products are not very expensive. It's just that we have a little bit of a this psychological barrier in our mind that it might be more expensive. It's not really more expensive. There are a lot of other ways in which they are saving money, and therefore if I put a, so first time my capital expense so for a solar power plant may be high. When I put a solar plant, for example, let's say cement plant, he says no, we are going to do away with a captive power plant, we are not going to use coal, we will use a different form of energy. So let's say they say we'll use solar or any other form of renewable energy. Obviously they are going to, operational cost goes down. So when the operational cost goes down, automatically the cost of the material, the raw material that or the finished product should go down, right? It's a bait and race, as I call it. And I'm saying this from my 14,000 days, that you cannot disown your suppliers or customers. They are your indirect aspects and impacts. This was the word. And this is going, and today it has gained so much importance, because people always thought, oh, that is the supplier responsibility, how am I responsible as an organization? Today you are. So basically that's what, and so to answer that, I gave you a lot of explanation, but I don't think green products are expensive. No.
Got it. I think this again, right? We've seen over and over again. We did this supply chain sustainability project with one customer, right? And I think while so we compared results over multiple years. In the first year, there was very limited communication with the suppliers, right? It was kind of very um, it was kind of handed off to them that, hey, you have to fill out these assessments for us and you send it back by this time. And we got a very limited response there. I think it was like a 20% only. What we changed in the second year is we did a lot of trainings. We did conversations with the suppliers, right? We explained to them how, of course, this is beneficial to the company, but it's very beneficial to them as a company as well. What's like the macroeconomic environment and sentiment around sustainability. And our response rate shot up like 3 times, right? And I completely agree with you that I think it's just like, I mean, just how if you want, when you're talking to a child, right? If you kind of reprimand them, hey, do this for me, they're gonna not comply. If you just kind of partner with them, hey, let's do this. It's good for you, it's good for me, and that's how we benefit. It typically does work very positively. Yeah.
So it's
Perfect.
collaboration.
Yeah. I have a couple technical questions now, right? So again, right, they might require I think both of us to think a bit, but I'll shoot the first one, which is by Priyam. Priyam says, in real estate, once a home is built and occupied, the builder typically bears responsibility. Does the builder bear the responsibility of scope 3 emissions?
So what happens is, when I'm saying I'm giving you a green home or a green environment or a green building, I'm already taking responsibility for scope 3. So how is it different? Now, so when I say I am taking responsibility of scope 3, I am actually giving you certain amenities in terms of energy efficiency, which has already reduced the load of greenhouse gas emissions on the environment. Okay, by procuring material which is more which has lesser emissions, okay, which are more sustainable, which are going to last you for a longer duration of time. So if the building pretty much stays for 50-60 years, I want to give you material which is going to be sustainable. So even if you have to break it down and put it back into the system and reuse something else, it is not going to harm the system. It's not going to create so much emissions, while even when you dispose it off. That's the whole idea. Is why, so my first thing when I came into the construction industry was, why is it that people don't focus on the scope 1, scope 2 emissions or water usage during construction? Why are we focusing so much post construction? So I had to do my own research and understand that while my project lasts for maybe 2 to 5 years, the when I'm giving a building or a home to a person, he's living for 50 years. So for 50 years, this person is going to use energy. For 50 years, he's going to use that space. For 50 years, he wants that complete daylight. For 50 years, he wants to have more energy efficient equipment and infrastructure or solar power or whatever. So when I thought of it that way, it all made sense to me. Now, the builder is telling you, I am giving you X, Y, Z. These are the things that I am giving you. He is, okay. One of the reasons why the builder gets certified is that the project gets validated through an external agency. Once again, it's either LEED or GRIA or IGBC, wherein they are saying, okay, you have a silver rating. Now, why do you have a silver rating? Because these are the things that you have accomplished. You have not accomplished some other things which could have given you a gold or a platinum, right? So you have only so much that you have done, but that's good enough. It's better than doing nothing. So I'm giving you a green building which is certified to silver through IGBC criteria. Read the criteria, and then those are the things that are put in there, right? Now, this is what the builder gives. Now, if you want, the builder will say, okay, I can give you facilities management. If the developer has some kind of a vertical, or he's tells you, okay, you can hire so-and-so agency for your facilities management, and they will ensure that all these things work properly for you. So this is the best a builder can do, thinking that for all his lifetime, he's going to take care of, I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
There's another question which is slightly similar, but more in terms of thinking about calculating scope 3, right? Harish asks, the electricity that a building consumes during its use, right, by the occupants, does that fall into scope 3 as well, right? And I would guess yes, that would be in your scope 3 and not your scope 2, right? Because I mean, same with Apple, right? I mean, like when we kind of use our phones and when we charge it, you do need electricity to run this, but that's not part of Apple's scope 2, and it is part of scope 3, right? So I believe it's the same for real estate, but yeah, you know better.
So that's where you actually see what is the life cycle of a building. That's where they do all those studies and identify. Now, when you're looking at scope 3, now the customer, so that is why you say, okay, you want to make sure that they are also switched to solar or alternate forms of energy. So your scope 3 reduces. So if they are taking it from the grid directly, and if all the energy is coming from a non-renewable source of energy, then obviously the scope 3 goes up. And if you've already given them an option, or you've already started off with a green energy, you've tied up with this has not happened yet, this can happen, you take a power purchase agreement with a grid, with Adani or Tata or Reliance or whoever else, and they provide X units of energy. Now, this is difficult in terms of customers, but I'm just still thinking about it loudly. Is that so the builder says, okay, we have a power purchase agreement. You will, as a society, if you want to continue, you continue. But these are the units that they will provide, which are renewable energy. Right now, when they say, okay, renewable energy, the advantage is that you don't have to pay too much for it. Okay, it's the same cost almost. And the advantage is you have reduced emissions. Your scope 2 emissions as an individual is reduced. Understand what I'm saying? And the scope 3 emissions of a builder, if he wants to get into it, is reduced. Arushi, for now, I don't think anyone has gotten into that space. It's very challenging. It's very difficult, right? That, to start thinking, okay, my scope 3 emissions is coming from the consumer who's using energy, who's living there. Tough.
Agreed. I believe Atharva also has a similar question that if my consumer is a polluter, then does it add to my scope three, right? I think your answer would be very similar to your previous one, right? It's such a
There's one more thing I can say. It'll differ in terms of homes and office spaces, which I'm leasing out. So when I'm leasing an office space, no, now if I give them all the incentives of a power purchase agreement and everything, and I have control over the energy part, right? Like how when we are in a building where we are renting an office space, right? So wahan pe the builder has the control also of the energy and stuff like that. So there are separate meters for everybody, right? So the control is now there with the builders in some way that okay, you have started, you are using non-renewable energy. How about shifting to renewable through our power purchase agreement? Something like that can be done over there. Okay, there is a possibility. I don't know how successful it will be, but there is a possibility in terms of leased assets. But once I sell the product to you, okay, it's like I sell a TV to you, okay, and then you're using the TV. You are consuming energy while using the TV. I have given you an energy efficient product. Now, whatever energy you're using while, kind of watching the TV, that doesn't come under my scope three. I have given you a product which is energy efficient, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, so there are these nuances here. We still need to understand how this is going to work. For now, I don't think after giving the home, the builder is going to worry about, oh, wo mera scope 3 hai. I'm done with it. I've given you an environment, a built environment where I've taken care of the maximum possible efficiencies in terms of total air, water, energy, land use, everything. And that's how I have been certified. That's why you won't see too many developers going in. You'll see only the major 4, 5 who are actually going in for ratings and certifications. You don't see very many because it is very challenging and it is
Got it.
complicated. I mean, I'm trying to find answers. So
Yeah. I think that there's another question I have in the chat as well is that I think while a lot of us, right, lots of companies, we're trying to figure this out as we go, right? Is there any company, any real estate company who you particularly admire, right? In terms of again, you cannot say Rustamji, right? No bias here, but any company.
No, I won't say it also. We have a
Okay.
long way to go, I believe.
Yeah, of course, right? So, which company do you
Yeah.
really respect and who you are watching very closely?
Yes, I admire the Mahindra space, Mahindra spaces, whatever they do. Somewhere I think I trust them, and I believe that when they're saying something, they're doing it. I think for me, even that is important. So if I look at a Mahindra or a Godrej, that's maybe it's my personal thing. Maybe it's what I have seen over the years is that they walk the talk. Other than that, I won't say anything. Yeah. So therefore, at Rustamji, we've decided we are going to take it slow. We're going to take it easy. But whatever we do, we will do it correctly. Right? And not, we don't want to greenwash anything here. So you make some big tall statements and actually not true is not what we want here. And so we're taking it easy and slow. But yeah, we're working towards a lot of things.
Got it. I think coming back to where we started, right? With your suppliers as well, are there what have your biggest challenges been so far, right? And of course, have there been opportunities where you were pleasantly surprised, right, by the feedback you got or the kind of collaboration that you received once you started engaging them? And any kind of stories come to mind that we can learn from?
So I think in terms of suppliers, like you had to do engage with them. Initially, I'll just tell you our story. We also sent them a questionnaire. So we also got some 15, 20 responses, and that's about it. This was way back for financial year 22, 23. And that's when we started doing all our activities here. Then in the last year, 23-24, we actually had online sessions with our critical suppliers. So first we decided who is it, which are our critical suppliers, who do we want to talk to? And how do we go about this whole process? So it was like, who is critical for us? So it was, without any doubt, purchase goods and services came as a very, very strong category, which we had to work on. Then we said, okay, let's now identify the topmost commodity. Having identified the commodity where we're spending maximum money, then we said, okay, now in this commodity, who's the one we're taking 80% from? That's how we broke it down. And then we had online sessions, and then so that actually was very good. We've had a lot of suppliers who were very happy, and that Rustamji had started interacting with them on ESG related issues. It was not purely only scope 3, it was ESG total, and sustainability, labor regulations, everything, in terms of manufacturing. So that's how. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
In the middle, it got a little.
Yeah, so it said your
it's good now.
internet connection is not stable.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so in terms of interaction with them and all that, that's how it was. And yes, we got very positive response. They attended the sessions, and so we were in many ways happy. Then we did our own study also, Arushi. A lot of sustainability reports we picked up for big companies and stuff like that online. It was not just relying on them, right? And then we also wanted to take it a little slow with the supply chain. So we've now recently decided, made our supplier code of conduct. And now we are in the process of sending the supplier code of conduct to all our critical suppliers. And then probably start engaging with them more effectively this year. And so I won't have too many stories in that space, but I do understand that it's important, and we're getting very good response from our suppliers. See, having been in business where Rustamji also has very good reputation with regards to their payments and stuff also. Suppliers are very happy. So when I say why are we not paying them earlier than what we're paying them and all, have these questions, saying they don't want it, they're fine. So I'm like, yeah, okay. Because they're happy that they're working with a very reputed developer, and they say money is not a problem, you buy from us. Okay, so also we are also in a stage where we can influence them. Okay, and we can say, okay, you must do this, do you have this? So our next step now is to actually send them their questionnaires once again and get them to respond to it, and then maybe kind of hold meetings, hold some kind of sessions only with suppliers, only with few critical suppliers, and understand how they want to go about it, what help they want from us. And maybe next time, maybe next year, I might have a story to tell. At this point in time, I don't have something that I can share in terms of suppliers.
Got it. No problem at all. I think this by itself is also helpful. A last question from my end, and then I think I've been picking up questions from the participants. But one last question, and then I'd let you folks kind of speak, unmute and speak as well. Is there another, like, if there are lots of folks here who are part of the real estate industry, some of them are in sustainability teams, right? Any advice for someone who's on, say, day one of their journey, right? Like you mentioned that when you came to Rustamji, you kind of picked everything up from zero and you built it to where it was, right? The
Yes.
folks who are there, what would you say to them?
So look at what is existing there first, because you'll see most of the real estate companies, they are pretty okay with health and safety, and mostly safety, because safety is one area. So when I'm now talking in terms of sustainability, so health and safety is a part of sustainability very much. It's not just, now we're moving away from the scope 3 part. Okay, so and therefore over there, if you see, so start there and see what kind of practices do they have in terms of health and safety. Can you do even have safety officers? Are they following basic requirements of having PPEs in place, having work permits in place? Do they have proper lifting tools and tackles? Do they have a first aid box? Do they have proper security? Start from there and then build on it. So when you look at that, then you get into the labor practices, and you say, how is do they have a labor camp? And then is the labor camp well maintained? Are people happy there living over there? You will see conditions which you may not like, but then at least you have started somewhere and say, okay, I can improve this area. So I'm talking holistically, okay? I'm not just talking environment. And then, of course, when you come to environment, you see by and large, they won't have anything. So you start with data collection and you say, okay, how can we build? So you break it down into 4 or 5 verticals and say, okay, water hai, air hai, you have waste and you have biodiversity. And so you have 4 or 5 verticals. And then you say, okay, let's understand what are we doing in terms of air emissions? Are we following the basic regulations and compliances? Because now in Maharashtra, we do have a regulation where they have to put up a barricade, which is 25 meters long, and then there has to be noise and so there's no noise, and when the trucks are coming in and going out with material, they need to be free of any kind of mud or dust or whatever. Their tires have to be cleaned. Are we following those basic requirements? So if the regulation is being followed, are the air emissions being monitored regularly? You know, the SPM, RSPM, SOx, NOx, etc., whatever that is. So if that all is happening, then you say, okay, even better, move to a next, see what data you have. Start looking at data. See if you have primary evidences. For example, tanker water. Very simple. When you get tankers coming in, there will be challans. How many tankers are you getting in a day? Do you have the challans for all the tankers? What kind of drinking water are you getting? Where is the water coming from? How much is, do you have meters installed? I can go on and on. That's how you start, and never give up, because this is one very upcoming area. So if you're really interested in it, I'm sure you'll find something or the other. In fact, there's so much to do that you have, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's also right. See, I think once you start getting into the nitty-gritties, right, there are like a 1,000+ little data points that go in an ESG report, right? Like, and that's the outcome. And when you kind of backtrack it and you look at, okay, there's one person in corner providing half of this data. And once you start looking into it and finding ways to improve, right, it's quite a lot. We
Then
have
you
a
get a
couple,
complete,
yeah.
yeah.
No, yes. Then you get a complete,
You get a complete picture, but
yeah.
it takes time. You have to have the patience. It's frustrating.
Hmm.
And like I said in the beginning, it's so unorganized.
Hmm.
That there will be very few and far in between who actually have systems in place. There are many small players, many small players in this space,
Yeah.
who are still trying to just get a hold and a grip. Yeah.
Yeah, I think back to the technical questions. I have one question by Priyam in the chat, and Priyam asked that how do you make sure that the suppliers are following the supplier code of conduct that you've given them?
We haven't yet. How do you make sure as an individual, because I have that experience, I can answer. We still haven't made sure anything. We haven't even given them the supplier code of conduct, first of all,
Yeah.
as part of our organization. We are going to start. How do you make sure is you go audit them? That's how you make sure. Very
Yeah.
simple. So you say, okay, we're coming for a visit. You take your checklist with you, make the checklist basis your supplier code of conduct, and audit them. That's how you make sure. It's as simple. There's no other way I will be able to do it. Right? Because see, I am going to get some answers which are correct, some answers which may just be, a little more flowery than it should be. So the only authentic way, the right way to understand whether, that's how you have supply chain audits, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think people do supply chain audits? Why do they hire an external agency to do supply chain audits? For the simple reason that are they following all the requirements of sustainability?
Yeah.
Right? So I have personally done a lot of audits on behalf of Infosys for their suppliers.
Okay.
Imagine an IT company and their suppliers, including HP and all those people. So for every different kind of a supplier, the requirement is different. Right? And once again, it's the supply chain whole area is not very easy, but I don't want to deter anybody. I'm pretty okay. I'm pretty comfortable that slowly and steadily we'll get there. So that's how you do it.
Yeah. Perfect. We have 3 minutes, so yeah, I can take, I believe, one more question. We'll take this one from Priyam again. So Priyam asks, Scope 3 also includes end-of-life treatment of sold products. So how come builders will not be responsible for Scope 3? I believe you did not say that. I believe this could be a confusion on Priyam's part. Uh, Priyam, do you want to maybe unmute and kind of further explain your question? Okay, no problem. Priyam, you could just kind of email it to me, and I'm more than happy to forward it to. Okay,
Oh,
yeah,
I
no,
think
no,
we
no,
already spoke about end of life treatment. No, I
yeah,
said the building is going to be there for 50 years or whatever. And the material that you use, for example, if you're using wood you're using which is from a sustainable source.
mm,
So you're providing something which has reduced emissions. And then when it goes into the environment also, it's easier to recycle it, reuse it, or reprocess it. Right? That's the best you can do.
mm,
Even if to get there is a big, I would say, achievement,
got it.
is to get your building certified.
Got it. Perfect. We're almost to at the end of this. Thank you so much, Namrata. This was amazing, amazing, amazing. I honestly learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone here did learn a lot. A couple folks had to drop off early, so they did leave me a message requesting the recording. So I'll kind of send it across. And yes, whoever's here, thank you so much for staying till the very end. And again, if you have any further questions that come up to your mind later, I'm more than happy to pick it up and pass it on to Namrata. And yeah, thank you so much. Hopefully, we can see you in our future webinars. And Namrata, would love to organize more conversations with you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Arushi. It was absolutely a pleasure. I actually enjoyed this whole conversation. And I'm happy with myself that my thoughts were just flowing as I was talking to you. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having you. And thank you everyone for attending this session. You know, this was very nice, very humbling. Thank you. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
And please share the recording with me also. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.